All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. I'm your host, Matt Heinz. So excited to have so many of you here. So excited for our guests and conversations here. I wish you could have been in the virtual green room just a couple minutes ago. Marcus is already on fire, so I can't wait to release him to you all. But thank you to those of you that are watching and listening live today in the middle of your work week, in the middle of your work day. If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, thanks for joining us. If you are doing that right now, you could be part of the show. If you have a comment, if you have a question, if you have a rant or rebuttal, put those in. We will see those in the comments. We will be able to respond to those as well. So thank you so much for doing those. If you are watching and listening on demand, thank you for subscribing and downloading. Almost 250,000 people have downloaded Sales Pipeline Radio. And so super excited for the impact we've been able to have for people over the years. Every episode of this podcast, past, present, and future, available always at salespipelineradio.com. Super excited today to have Marcus Sheridan joining us today. He is a keynote speaker. I've seen him speak. He's phenomenal. If you're looking for a keynote, definitely look him up. Author of the books, The Visual Sale, They Ask You Answer, and his newest book, Endless Customers. Marcus, thanks for being here.
All right, brother. Let's do this, man. I am fired up today.
You are fired up. Well, I want to get right back into it. We'll talk about the book in a minute, but we started by talking about AI and just how. Well, I'm not even going to steal your words. Just like human reaction to AI, I'll just call it irrational and let you go from there.
Yeah, it's very irrational, in my opinion. And this is the type of thing, this is a subject that gets people just going. I did a post recently on LinkedIn, and I got a lot of traction. Essentially, it came from my daughter, who works with me. She's traveled with me around the world. I mean, she gets my brain. She comes to me and she says, she's 24 years old. She says, Dad, I've come to realize that I just enjoy talking to AI customer service more than human customer service. And then she lists the reasons why. She's like, they're patient. They're never they're not grumpy. The only goal is to try to help me solve my problem. Now, she's smart enough to know the difference, by the way, between AI and some like really cheap chatbot assistant that has no value in life, right? Sometimes people, well, not sometimes, lots of times we see people that are skewing their previous interactions with some automated telephone system or some really bad chatbot, and they're calling that AI. And the reality is that we don't have to talk to humans, and we don't really care. What we want fundamentally is our problems to be solved quickly. We want to find what we want, and we want to find it fast. And there's all these reasons and data that shows this. But this idea that the amount of comments that post got, first of all, the amount of people that said, you never had that conversation with your daughter, what the heck? What is wrong with you people? Yes, I had that conversation with my daughter. Secondly, was the amount of people that said, I've never had a good interaction with AI. And truth be told, if you haven't, you probably haven't used any modern AI tools, because if you'd use one that had been trained properly, it's pretty extraordinary, some of the conversations that you can have with it. And all you have to do is have a voice conversation with ChatGPT right now on your phone. And you're not going to say, that's terrible. You're going to say, wow, that's actually really, really impressive. So you can see that the battle lines are starting to be drawn, Matt, in terms of, the clenching of the fists whenever anybody says, AI does this pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I literally this morning was looking at a CMO's sort of an org chart, but it was really more of an accountability chart of the work that they need done to drive a successful marketing organization. And it wasn't an org chart about where people are as much as it was an accountability chart. Here's the functions I need done. Here's the work I need done. And the top half were managers sort of owning strategy, and the bottom half were a bunch of agents, right? That own different components that would have been people, that would have been junior people in the organization. And now you've got agents that can do that work. It's not replacing the people. I think it's upgrading what we allow people as humans to do in that process. But our lizard brains, Marcus, think that's really scary. Our lizard brains think that movies are becoming reality. And I think sometimes it clouds us from seeing the potential that we can now accelerate ourselves into to have the job that we ultimately really want anyway.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, if you're not feeling somewhat superhuman, you're probably not using AI the right way. and you're probably not using it nearly as often as you should. Of course, the big debate is where's the entry level jobs at, right? It's like what does entry level mean today? And maybe that's going to evolve, over the course of time. But it's fascinating to me. I do know this, that the market is going to do what the market does. I've learned that in business. Endless Customers talks about this. How we try to fight against the tide, but the tide always comes up and then it goes down. It comes up, it goes down. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care if you move your lounge chair or not. It's going to do what it does.
Right.
And so we have to understand that when it comes to the market.
Yeah, talking today on the Sales Pipeline Radio with Marcus Sheridan, author of the new book Endless Customers, famous for saving his swimming pool company in 2008. Do you have like a 2-minute version of that story? I know some people have heard it, some people have not.
Yeah, so I started as pool guy 2001, grew the business slowly. Then 2008 nearly knocked us out. Thought we were going to file bankruptcy. And the beauty of pain and suffering is that it forces us to think outside the box. I started learning a ton at that time. I was trying to save the business. And I said, okay, sounds like the way we save it is if we become the best teachers in the world when it comes to fiberglass pools online. So we said, we're going to answer every single question that anybody's ever asked us. And we became the Wikipedia of fiberglass pools, the WebMD, if you will. And within a couple of years, we had the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And I started to write about the success we were having. And that led to a book called They Ask You Answer. And now over 100,000 people have read that book, applied it to their business. We've seen extraordinary results, but times have changed with AI. And so we said we have to do a new iteration and with a new name. And there you have it, Endless Customers.
Yeah, and I think people, that used to focus a lot on content for search engine optimization are starting to think about that as sort of GPT optimization, making sure the language learning models understand what they're doing. Yes. I don't think it changes the fundamental need for original content and ideas. And I love the idea that you took like just questions you're getting from customers and prospects, turning that into content. I think, I don't know if you know, Andy Crestodina at Orbit Media, if he gets a question in a biz dev process, he will turn that into a 1,500 word blog post. And now he not only has the answer for other prospects, but other people searching for him online have that as well. If 2008, go ahead.
Everything's about signals today, right? And we got to please 3 fundamental parties if we're going to be successful going forward. Number one, we got to please customers. We got to be known. We got to be found and recommended by customers. Number 2, we got to be recommended by search engines. We got to be known, found, recommended by them. And then number 3, we got to be known by AI. And that's not necessarily in order of importance, by the way. And your ability to send out signals to the market that says this is a known and trusted brand is going to become everything to your success going forward. And along those lines, because we're talking about it, you cannot build your house on Google and think that house is going to be built to last, friends. And I don't care what SEOs tell you that have been in the game and are afraid to lose your business. You cannot build a long-term company on Google alone. It's not going to work.
Well, it's not going to work in part because like you don't own the algorithm. It's rented land versus owned land. It's not a land you control. And so you start to think about like, what do you have control over? You have a control over what you say, where you say it, especially if you can plant that on owned land versus rented land. And how do you start to get into the hearts and minds of those customers? If the platforms go away, the relationship in someone's brain doesn't go away. And even in B2B, we focus a lot on sort of account-based, and we focus a lot on the target accounts we want to go to. But the account doesn't have a soul. The account doesn't have a heart. So your ability to actually sort of live there with your customers, I think, is critical. And, I think we could probably both rant a little bit on sort of the short-term mentality of a lot of marketers saying, I got to hit my number tomorrow. How do I get leads this afternoon? Which, you can go do some performance marketing to increase your conversion rates, but that usually does very little to build long-term equity with that audience.
Yeah. In the book, we talk about what we call the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand. And things are going to change a lot in the coming years, as we've already stated. Platforms are going to come and go, right? You don't want to make big bets on platforms as a forever thing. What you want to put your big bets on are principles, because they're always built to last. And so whether we're talking today or in 10 years or in 20 years, trust is going to be fundamental to your business. Yes. So you've got to become a known and trusted brand. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's the 4 pillars. Number 1, you got to be willing to say what others in your space aren't willing to say. And we got a bunch of frameworks for that. But, most companies essentially follow the rules they've been given by everyone else and do not address what buyers really want to know online.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Number two, you got to be willing to show with video what others in your space aren't willing to show. Most aren't thinking like a media company. Most haven't gone all in on video like they should, even though many industries are now video first, tech second. And three, you got to be willing to sell in a way that others in your space aren't willing to sell. Most aren't willing to do that, even though they think they've got a unique sales process. As you know, Matt, they do not. And finally, number four, you got to be more human than others are willing to be. When I say be more human, I mean make the human connection with someone on a very deep level. And there's ways that you can do that, especially using AI and technology more than we ever have before. So those are the big four. Most don't follow.
Yeah, I think you mentioned sort of how things are changing. And I think, I've been alive for a while and I've been in business for a while. And I've heard things are changing rapidly for a long time and they continue to. But I think a lot about Pascal Finette, and he calls himself a futurist, and he talks about this thing he calls the innovation paradox. And I'm probably going to paraphrase this poorly, but he says the innovation that has happened in the past appears far shallower than it actually was. Right? You think about this incredible computer that we take for granted, all the things your phone can do that literally just 16 years ago, like mostly didn't exist, and now as we take it for granted, right? Like Wi-Fi on an airplane, like that still kind of bogs my mind, right? Innovation in the future will not be nearly as steep as it feels like it will be today. And that has almost always bared out as well. And people say, well, AI may break that and go faster. But we've been talking about, sort of a post-chat GPT AI world for almost 3 years now. And yes, things are advancing, but our ability to sort of think of those as the new normal, our ability to normalize those things in our life, just like the phone, is happening and will continue to happen. How do you buy that?
Yeah, the quote that I like the most is, "You cannot fit the future in the containers of the past."
Mm-hmm.
And it's really powerful because what happens is somebody might say, well, I mean, when websites came out, you really didn't have to have a website for 10 years and
Mm-hmm.
you could get away with it. But eventually you had to have a website.
Right.
But it's like today, what I've seen, I don't know if you feel this way, Matt, but I feel like the rate of change since ChatGPT came out is faster than the rate of change from the previous decade. It's like we're seeing with each new iteration of the tech, you're like, son of a gun, this is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Like deep research comes out, a
Yeah.
lot of people are sleeping on it, and I'm like, holy freak, this
Yeah.
is extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like agents, right? It's like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me right now? The problem is there's still so much ignorance in the market that people just don't realize what's possible right now. And really only like there's only a couple % of people that are really into it saying, oh my goodness. And reality is they're going to just create, this is why you're going to see billion-dollar businesses that have a couple of employees. I mean, it's just going to happen. It's inevitable, even though that's hard for people to understand. You can't fit the future in the containers of the past.
I remember years ago, and I don't even know if she still does it, Mary Meeker, who I think she was at Kleiner Perkins at the time, would do her like internet report, right? And there was one year where she says, like, we are not far away from for mobile being the primary platform versus like laptop or desktop. And I'm not at all a futurist. So in my brain, I'm like, there's no friggin' way mobile usurps like us looking like I'm on a laptop, but there's no way that happens. And now you kind of take it for granted. Right.
That's right.
And so it's sort of taught me that like whenever I think something is not possible or if it's outside of my frame of reference, I'm like, that might happen. Right. You can't say that's not going to happen. Now, you don't want to sit here and say every flash, every fly by night, every idea, every fad is going to stick. So I guess I ask you, like, how do you identify the things that are going to have some staying power? And how do you start it? You don't need to be necessarily at the very crest of the wave, but if someone's listening, if they're in business, if they're an entrepreneur, if they're a go-to-market leader, how do you try to separate the wheat from the chaff there?
The way that has worked for me the best, far and away, Matt, is becoming very, very self-aware. And this really started for me in 2008, 2009 when I was struggling and I thought I was going to lose the business. It's becoming very self-aware of your own behaviors online. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that I was shifting away from traditional media and I was starting to learn everything from online, like from websites. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going this way, obviously it makes sense that the world would go in the same direction because this is so much easier. It's so much more effective. It's just a better UX overall in terms of learning, in terms of shopping. So I said, let's go all in on this thing called our website and not do any of that other crap that's a distraction. And of course, that decision just changed our business forever. And if you become very self-aware, you start to notice things like, okay, how much more am I using my phone today than I was using it 5 years ago? How much more video am I watching today than I was watching 5 years ago? Like how much, how much stuff am I renting today versus owning 5 years ago? It's like there's all these trends that you represent, but you're not paying attention, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, how often are you not going to Google now and going to ChatGPT or Claude or something like that instead?
Right.
See, if this is happening, it means, oh, guess what? You're going to do that more in the future. And eventually, you're probably not going to be using Google at all because you can get exactly what you want in a better answer, in a better form, in a quicker way with a different platform.
And I agree with you. And I do think that, you don't have to wait till that 10-year point. Oh, no one's going to need a website for 10 years. Well, you don't have to wait 10 years. And you don't have to start on day 2, right? Like if you think about like the innovations that came out, like if you were hot to trot on YouTube from the beginning, good for you. If you did the same thing with Google Plus, well, maybe that didn't work out, right? LinkedIn, awesome. Clubhouse, maybe not so much, right? And so you don't have to be there at the very beginning, but as things start, I mean, and I would say like a real-time example of that right now might be like Blue Sky. Like, I don't know, maybe the jury's still out on Blue Sky. Does that actually become kind of a real Twitter alternative? Or is that going to be like this year's Clubhouse? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you the answer. No. Just like I said with Clubhouse, that was such a mega no. I could tell so quickly that was just a spur of the moment thing. And I tell you why. And by the way, I would call myself a futurist, but I'm really good at looking about a year and a half to 2 years like ahead. And with Clubhouse, it was so stinking obvious because I'm like, there's no way someone is going to spend this much time listening to people that they may or may not enjoy liking, because it's never going to create a consistent experience. And if you can't create a consistent experience, it's not going to fly. And I was dogging Clubhouse, and everybody's like, Marcus, it's going to be awesome. Like, I'm going to place all my money on the one that says that platform is going to and it did. So but that's why we want to be principle centric, not platform centric.
Yes.
And what's going to continue to matter? Transparency, right? Disruption, not following the rules that you've been given, all these things. And of course, that's what I'm trying to drive hard so home and teach so clearly with Endless Customers.
So we're running out of time with our guest today, Marcus Sheridan. Definitely want to make sure you check out his new book, Endless Customers. You can check that out by going to endlesscustomers.com. Before we run out of time, if people that are not proud mountaineers from the university or from West Virginia University may not know about the pepperoni roll. Can you explain the pepperoni roll to people that may not be from West Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like one of the great inventions of West by God, and the way that it works is you've got this great little feels like a homemade roll, but inside of it you've got pepperoni and cheese, and they sell it at all these different convenience stores. If you throw it in the microwave and for about 20 seconds, and then it starts to change your life, and you're never the same, and you take it with you the rest of your life. So if you haven't had a pepperoni roll, you haven't lived your fullest existence just yet.
Can you get a decent pepperoni roll like outside regionally? I mean, you're not that far from home where you are, but is it? I'm in Seattle. Is it even possible?
Maybe Pittsburgh. Okay. That's about it. Yeah, that's about it.
The other thing before we go, so I had until this summer, I had never been to a Buc-ee's. Okay, so we did a family reunion in the Smoky Mountains. We flew into Nashville and then we drove east to Pigeon Forge. And we started to see these billboards. And the one that got me was, it said, Buc-ee's 45 minutes. We understood the assignment. And I'm like, I still didn't know anything about Buc-ee's. And we get there and I'm like, boy, howdy did they. That's one of those things that you kind of like, I wish there was one closer, but I don't think it would work. I think it's just a Southern institution.
But let me just say this, and this is going to sound self-serving because somehow I'm going to find a way to bring that back to my book. And that is this. Sally Hogshead says something that I just love so much, which is different is better than better. Yeah. Now, Buc-ee's is clearly better, but they're very, very different. And it's a reason why they have a phenomenal following is they didn't follow the rules they were given by everyone else in their space. Mm-hmm. And so if you're looking to do something extraordinary, as Buc-ee's has done, and they're going to just that's a brand that's built to last. And God bless Buc-ee's in Texas, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to build extraordinary brand, you can't follow the rules you've been given. That's why I invite you to go to endlesscustomers.com. Check out the book, endlesscustomers.com. You want to get it because it's going to give you a system that you can follow to become the most known and trusted brand in your market.
Marcus, you're a busy man. Thank you so much for your time today. Everyone check out endlesscustomers.com. Some great content and insights there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. We'll see you back here in a couple weeks. Until then, have a good rest of your week. We'll see you soon.